Welcome to the
Hello, this is to test the audio. Hello, and thank you for joining us for our webinar, Online College Students 2015, Comprehensive Data on Demands and Preferences. Today, we will be exploring the findings from the 4th Annual Online College Students Report produced by both the Learning House and Aslanian Market Research. We are excited to be joined by the authors of that report today, Dr. David Kleinfelter and Carol Aslanian. Dr. David Kleinfelter is the Chief Academic Officer at Learning House, where he develops the highest academic tools, training systems, and strategies for the company's online partners. David's 30-year career in education spans all levels, from K-12 to higher education. Dr. Kleinfelter's previously served as both Vice President of Academic Affairs and President at Graceland University, as well as Provost at Kaplan University from 2002 to 2010. Carol Aslanian is Director of Aslanian Market Research at Education Dynamics. Carol is a national authority on the characteristics and learning patterns of post-traditional online and campus-based students. She has conducted more than 400 regional and national market studies for institutions that seek to grow their enrollments among post-traditional and adult students. Carol has made hundreds of presentations to educational institutions, state agencies, and national associations, focusing on her major area of expertise, access to higher education for place-bound and time-bound students. Today's webinar will last approximately 1 hour. As a reminder, please make sure that your audio is on mute before we begin. You are encouraged to ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A panel. We will answer these questions periodically throughout the webinar. Following today's webinar, the slides will be emailed to all registrants within the next few days. A recording of the webinar will be made available on the Learning House website. Thank you again for your participation, and now let me hand things off to Dave.
Welcome, everyone. We're delighted that you would take the time to join us here today, and we're looking forward to your questions. Report as well as their presentation. questions and comments via writing as we with the overall presentation.
Hi, Dave. Hold on just a second for us, please. For some reason, we're having a problem where you keep getting muted. Give us just a moment to try to sort it out.
Muting and muting back.
Okay, Dave, we might be okay. Do you mind giving it a shot? Sorry about that.
Yeah, let's do a little. Is that good now? Testing, 1, 2, 3.
So far, so good.
Let me try to. Okay, I think we're ready to go now. Aaron, you give me the high sign if we have any issues or concerns. Just a reminder to everyone that this is the 4th annual survey that we've done, so that if you want to hear or see some of the data and some of the findings from the previous studies, you're welcome to go to the website and download those reports. Some of the questions we repeat every year, and other questions are new each year, so there's a lot of rich data that is not in this presentation that's on the in the previous reports. So just a little bit of background to remind folks about where we are with online education in the U.S. today. About 1/4 of all U.S. students are taking at least some of their courses online, 26%, and about half of those, 13%, or close to 2.6 million students are taking all of their work online. It's a growing number, and shows the depth and level of penetration of the online programs in the education space. This next slide shows the growth over time in the online enrollments, and some projections in the future from the folks at EduVentures. So right now it's pretty flat, and we think that there's slow growth, about 1% a year for the past few years, but that's going to pick up again here in a few years. There's a complicating factor to this phenomenon that there's kind of slow growth in the online student population. That is that there's fairly rapid growth in the number of institutions that are offering online programs. The last year that IPEDS has data on this from 2012, there was a 21% increase or thereabouts in the number of institutions that are offering fully online, but only a 1 to 2% increase in the number of students. So you can see that the competition is going to be getting much more intense as we go forward. This is the data that shows the number of institutions currently 200 programs that are doing programs like this. So competition is going to get tougher as we go forward, and we'll highlight some of those findings you may use to respond to this as we go forward. Let me turn over to Carol now. Methodology with graphic data about this population. Carol?
Okay, thanks, Dave. I'm glad to be with you all today. This is the 4th year, as Dave has said, that we've conducted this nationwide study of fully online college students, undergraduate and graduate. Our sample size continues to be about 1,500 respondents, and there were some very stringent requirements to be entered into the survey. You had to be 18 or more years of age. We had to have a minimum of a high school diploma or GED. You were currently enrolled in, had recently graduated from, or had very firm plans to enroll in an online college degree or certificate program. This last criterion is very, very important to us. It matches our market studies where we rely on demand data and not need data. That is, we only talk to those people who are the consumers of online education to get accurate data of who they are, what they want, and where they went. So we're very careful not to take aspirants or people who are interested in online education, but those who actually have, are, or have firm plans to enter the online education realm. Moving on, let me give you a few demographics of the population. First, we'll go to gender. And I think it's no surprise, because I see many of the institutions in the audience today understand well that the post-traditional student, who many times is on to online education, is much more dominated by women than men. And you can see that, in our regular studies of all students, whether they were online or not, we tend to get 30 to 35% men compared to women. And the men fall a little bit short on gender in comparison to the population overall, edging up to 30% both for undergraduate and graduate. So this domain of online education is heavily dominated by women. Many people ask us, why do you think that's true? And the response I think that is most usable in this respect is that many times women enter professions and have to advance in professions that require more and more education. Think of education, field of education, social sciences, health professions. To really maintain your credibility in these fields, you have to keep going back to school, and they tend to be somewhat dominated by women. And secondly, I think online education has a particularly good onto women because they tend to juggle many life roles, and online education gives them an extra opportunity to handle life, work, children, and study. Next, let's move on to age, and as you can see, I have the staff circle one very prominent number. Online education is ageless, as you can see by that red circle. So those of you who have online programs that are age-based, you're missing a good portion of the population. Almost 1 out of 4 undergraduates in online programs under the age of 25. So we cannot call this adult education. We cannot call it professional education. It is education for anyone of any age. In fact, we have younger graduate students as well, and these would be the people who continue their graduate programs directly after undergraduate school. But the median age for undergraduates in online education is 30, and for graduate students, 32. Those are very low medians of age in higher education, given the population we're dealing with. So in general, we're dealing with a younger population, and those of you who are creating marketing strategies, want to be effective in your messages, remember the fact you're talking to not an older, savvy type of older worker or employee. You're talking to young people who are aspirants in terms of what they're looking for to move ahead in their careers. On to marital status. Not too much news here, except I think that undergraduate proportion, of course, just over half are single, about half and half are married, and half are single, and it's relatively true with graduate students. Not too much to learn from this. Moving on to total household income. And there you see, let's just look at the median. The median of $50,000 for undergraduates is just about the national median in total population income. And the graduate student always heads up about $20,000 more because they tend to be working more often full-time and have more professional lives. So in general, let's see, let's look at the employment status next. The undergraduates, you might say they're not working full-time, right? Because only 44%, less than half, are working full-time. But in general, almost 70% have some form of work in their background or their current status. But many of them do have time to study because over half have time during the day or evening to pursue their education, whereas graduate students are less often available for study. 2/3 of them are employed full-time, and I'm sure that online education gives them a leg up in how to squeeze in all their responsibilities. And I'll move it over now to Dave, and he'll pick up with what brings them to online education.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that the overwhelming reason these people go to college online is to improve their employment status. There's a variety of questions here, but in the ones that all relate to employment, either getting a new job, getting a promotion at work, getting that first job, it's the motivation that drives these people to work. This is kind of a foundation concept for online education. Some of the data that we'll show later play off of this because it impacts the number of institutions they look at, that they consider when they enroll, and some of their practices, because it's all about getting jobs for these folks. And can't kind of overstate that and have to keep that in mind as one of the primary findings here, actually. So here's the programs that they study. No change from previous years. We've asked this question each year. Business is clearly the #1 field of study or topic of study for the undergrads. Computers and IT actually moved up a little bit this year, and nursing, health professions is in 3rd place. And then it tails off pretty dramatically from there. We'll show you the graduate school numbers. They parallel this pretty closely in red here. Business and computers IT at the top. The interesting thing is that education this year dropped down to 4th place. It has been the 2nd most enrolled program at the graduate level up until this time. It reflects some of the things that are happening in the teaching profession. But the other thing that we want to say about this particular slide is that we aggregate or we group these majors or these fields of study into these broad categories of business, computers, IT, and so forth. But if you look at the specific programs that are being offered, there's a proliferation of subspecializations, fields that are kind of one part of a broader discipline like business, for example, finance or real estate or other subtopics are now becoming degrees. So as institutions grow and expand, they start adding specializations and breaking degrees into smaller fields or disciplines as they go.
Dave, let me interject something here on this graduate field of study. Business is #1. It has been #1. It continues to be #1. And I know recently when we worked with the University of San Francisco, which I think is on the line here today, there was some concern about the MBA losing its power. And it may have to certain degrees, but what people are looking for in business is more specialization. The MBA in general may have lost a little bit of its strength, but business ranks high because many schools have found that the specializations within business are a bit more popular and growing in popularity, whereas the MBA stands a little bit stable, if not declining.
Good point. So if you're a leader in an institution that offers online programs, the big question is, what programs should we offer? And obviously, business is pretty popular, as well as IT, nursing, and so forth. But there's also room for institutions that have a very specialized program or a niche program where they can dominate that space, or they're one of a few institutions that offer it. So we have institutions that I've worked with, for example, that have degrees in very specialized fields like sign language or mining, or as I mentioned, real estate. So those programs can be very effective even though the total population is pretty small. Let's go on to this next finding about would they enroll in a classroom program if the online program wasn't available? And we ask a series of questions about that. We summarize the data here that a number of these students say that they definitely or probably would not enroll in that program if it wasn't offered in the online format. So institutions that hesitate because it may cannibalize a current on-ground program are going to lose out on a certain group of students who have just said they're not going to go if it's not available online. So something to keep in mind as you think about the programs that you offer face-to-face and online. I personally see a trend in the institutions I work with that as they offer a face-to-face on-ground program, the students themselves start to migrate to the online option, and eventually there's very few students left that are taking the face-to-face program. That's a trend that keeps turning up.
And I think your earlier data, Dave, on the proportion of online and those taking at least one course, in many colleges, those who are with us today, their undergraduates, their traditional quote-unquote undergraduates are taking online courses, and I think you'd all admit out there that when you offer online courses, they meet their enrollments quickly, and you have to, close the class. So what we are reading for graduate study and thereafter is probably a crew of people who have tried and liked online and will probably seek more.
Yeah, there's another factor behind this that more and more high school age students are getting experience with online programs. There's several states now that require an online class of a high school student for high school graduation. So as those students come through the system, they're going to be more acceptable to take an online classes and maybe less willing to take a face-to-face class.
Dave and Carol, we have a real quick question through the Q&A about a previous slide. What are specific specializations in business that are being offered?
Oh, wow. There's, the typical standard ones would be things like marketing or finance or business management or leadership. And then you get into more specializations, like I mentioned, real estate. So there's a wide variety. Almost anything you can think of is probably being offered. Carol, do you have something to add there?
I think in our USF study, entrepreneurship came out quite strong as a topic within business, entrepreneurship.
Great. And as a follow-up, are those offered as full degrees within the business degree or concentrations attached to the MBA?
Both. Yeah, what happens is the institution starts with a general all-purpose degree like business administration, and then they start offering specializations, maybe 3 or 4 within that field, and one of those specializations is popular, attracts a lot of students, so they build it into a separate standalone degree. That's the typical progression that you see.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure, let's look at this next slide. We asked a question. These are students that obviously like online. 90% of them say it's equal to or better than face-to-face. So remember, our students that have enrolled and are taking fully online programs. So we asked them, what are your problems or your concerns that you see with online classes? So I think this is very interesting data. And I don't need to read it to you, but you can look down through this. And one of the interesting findings for me is that a number of these factors, like inconsistent poor communication with fellow students, with faculty members, poor quality of instruction, all of these things we can address and we have some control over. So even though students find online popular, I think there's lots of room for improvement, and there's some indicators here of things that each person can do that leads an online program to make it more appealing and more satisfying to students.
And let me add something here, that these are great statements which you need to work on for your advertising messages and your recruitment campaigns. For example, if they are concerned about the perceptions of quality, then you've got to get out there and maybe get quotes from our students or employers or people who have participated and who can, use our data that say they think it's as good, if not better, than classroom. You've got to tell the audience you're trying to attract why these misconceptions exist. Also, Dave and I just talked to a reporter at a major magazine who said there are many, many myths about cost. And one myth about cost is that online education costs more. And I'm looking at the colleges on the list here today, and I'm sure, as I asked in our seminar last week, do you charge more for online courses? And the answer is, on the whole, 90% said no. Once upon a time, we did charge more, but I think we've lost that procedure. So it's very important to let your audiences know that it doesn't cost more to take online learning in general. And if you are charging more for online education, you might reconsider that.
Let's move on to the next topic then. Carol, I think you're going to speak to this slide.
Okay, let me take on here. And this is good news for all of you. I know we've got a lot of regional institutions in our midst, from Riviera to St. John's to Point Park to Clark University and so forth. So you should be very happy to hear that, what is it now, 65% or so of an online student will choose an institution in his or her region within 100 miles. So when you get a little bit timid and wonder whether you can compete with all those people spending millions of dollars online on television commercials and so forth, make sure you remind yourself and remind your leadership that 2/3 of adults will select an institution within 100 miles. So your market is more regional than national. And that's good. And why? Because they know you. Their employers or prospective employers know you. Their friends have attended. They got family who can recognize your name. So there are many, many good reasons why an online student will prefer an institution nearer than farther. Now, there's only one exception to this, and as Dave said earlier, these boutique or niche topics. If you have something that's low volume and you've got to go farther, but you're really expert in it, like the University of Vermont once asked us to assess the demand for an online sustainability certificate. Well, we thought we shouldn't stay in Vermont, we shouldn't stay in New England, so we analyzed the national market for that, and it showed quite a lot of promise. So for your major topics, like the ones that Dave reviewed earlier, you can get most of your population within 100 miles. If you have boutique topics or niche topics, you might have to go farther. But I think this is good news to the types of institutions that are with us today, because you can compete better nearer than farther. Okay, moving on. That was, did I do the undergraduate? Let's see, did I, 1 minute, sorry. I think the pattern is true for both, so I'm speaking for both here. Important factors to college selection. Dave, do you want to take that? And
I'm happy to. We ask this question each year, and we keep coming back with similar responses. What are the key factors that you look at when you select a college or a university? And it's always been brand or reputation and price or tuition. And this year, however, there was a little bit of switch in the tuition and fees. The price question rose to the top, and overall reputation or quality came in second place. And this is a trend and a theme that we saw across the data this year, that more and more the issue is about affordability and expense. So more to come on that, but it's a key issue to pay attention to. And you can see the other topics here that are down the side about what are factors. There's lots and lots of factors that influence why students pick a college, but those two have always been at the top of the list. We drilled down on the question about reputation and asked, what is it that determines reputation or quality? And far and away the #1 response is accreditation, which in some ways is not helpful, because almost every institution that's in operation in online programs is accredited. There may be a distinction between national and regional accreditation, but accreditation is clearly a top issue. So what I see happening in this arena is that because accreditation is the #1 issue, most institutions are accredited. It's hard to distinguish if you're a consumer, potential student, which is the better program, which is the better quality institution. So I think if they use accreditation as the primary criteria, then it makes sense for them to pick the cheapest, because we're all accredited. It means we're equal in quality, but why not pick the cheapest then if we're comparing on accreditation? So the opportunity here is for institutions to define their reputation, to define what they mean by quality and why their reputation is strong, or why their institution may be the one of choice, and not just take the cheapest one.
Okay, I'll move on to top marketing messages.
Do you mind if I interject real quickly with a question, Carol?
Sure.
What's the distinguishing factor between reputation and recognized as high quality in the important factors to college reputation?
Dave.
I mean, you have to interpret that question yourself. I mean, we could probably word that question better when we do the next one. So let me switch back so you can see, everybody can see the choices here. We don't know what they think of when they say recognizing your field as a high quality institution. That's a judgment that individual consumer is making on their own. And so you may have your own ideas about that, but we don't have like a standard definition that we gave these students. This is the actual questions that they got and they responded to. Okay?
Right, and since,
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think also that since a good portion of them are working, and they're working in a field where they want to advance, that their co-workers and supervisors and other individuals in their organization, be it specializing in business or social services or whatever, they will hear where to go to study X, Y, or Z. So they want that recognition from those around them who will make a determination about their future in the field they're in. So I think we're up to top marketing messages. And consistent with what Dave said a little bit earlier, the key message is we are affordable. And many of you, I can see from your advertisements and your campaigns, have recognized that factor. But if you look at the top leaders in this table, affordable tuition, free textbook, high job placement rate, a degree in 1 year, first course free, lowest tuition, accepts most transfer credits, this all interprets as cost. Scholarships available. So if you look at your commercials, you don't want to show the college campus as the most beautiful place to learn, or not necessarily the classroom environment, or the library, or the athletic teams. What they want to hear most in your marketing message is, how can I get through your institution with a reasonable cost? And transfer credits, of course, at the undergraduate level are vital. They all want you to, most of these people come into undergraduate online education with some credits, 30, 40, 50, and they want them to be acceptable at your institution. As you can see, many of the for-profit institutions are awarding scholarships as a way to attract people, but we cannot say enough about the various ways you can indicate through this listing how you are affordable, and that's what they want to hear.
It's important to remember, too, in this question, they had lots of choices. We had, I think, 30-some different choices from, supportive, friendly environment to high-touch kinds of activities, but everything that rose to the top 10 here, it seems like, was about cost or outcomes like job placement.
Right. I'm now going to go on to the topic of how many institutions did they contact? Well, look at that. 1/3 only chose you to inquire about. So what this says to Dave and me is that you better attend to all your inquiries, because 1/3 of them are in your pocket if you behave appropriately. So, and this goes back to that regional feature, that they are considering area institutions and may not be as much choice with online education in your region. And so they contact the nearest institution that has the program they want. When they go up to 1 or 2 institutions, that takes up the majority of people. So they're not shopping around as much as we once thought. They are probably more of a captured market than your undergraduates of traditional age. So the message here again is pay attention when you get the inquiry. Pay attention when you get the email. Pay attention to the phone calls, because 1 out of 3 will enroll with you. Next, we'll move on to reason for selecting the top choice that they did. Well, we know earlier the cost is vital, but some people will say, you know, I got to have the right program to match the cost, okay? The right program cannot be beat. I won't study pharmacy for a lower price. I need to go into social services, okay? Next, effectiveness of marketing channels. This is effectiveness of making you aware of my institution. So it's an awareness measure. What makes them aware of you? And so as you can see, the listings on college search engines, which is the first one, you can get that all on there, but listings on college search engines like gradschools.com, elearners.com is the highest. But my colleagues and I here at the office would say, don't forget direct mail to home. And this comes up in all our area market studies, and that direct mail still works, by the way. I think we're getting inundated with email communication, and some people would like to see an attractive postcard or a flyer, whatever, directly to their home. Commercials on TV, I believe, Dave, and I think you'll agree with me, is here, not because we think you can all afford it and we're recommending it, but it's because so many of the big players, the Southern New Hampshires, the Grand Canyons and others are doing a lot on television, so that is making this population aware of them. Okay. Next, sources of information. So when they want detailed information, sources of detailed information, they'll go to the search engine, so you better be well optimized. And social media, because that's peer-to-peer contact, and they want, you know, what did you think of the place? Did you go there? So they want their peer information and so forth down the way. These are average ratings on a scale of 1 low to 5 high. Moving on, what's the process they use after identifying an institution of visit? And guess what? Your website. We don't need to tell you that. You know that. And you all say you know that, but not many of you are fixing those websites, to be absolutely clear, with all the data we showed you earlier. What we showed you earlier is exactly what should be on your website, because this is where they'll run to get the specifics. And there's nothing that beats the website in this list, but phone calls to the institutions, 1 out of 3, and do you know what it's like to call your institution for information? So you either have to have a new number, a different number, where you can be sure that that 33% that will select you gets answered, her questions answered by someone at any time of day, 7 days a week. Moving on. And of course, matching the earlier information, the most important thing they want to know is your tuition and fees. Is it affordable? And you know, that's the hardest thing to find on your website. Go to your website after this program and see if you can easily find what it's going to cost to attend by various degrees. And second, what about your transfer credit reciprocity and things that we mentioned earlier, because this is the primary area of interest for them. The importance of the first contact. The question was, we thought we should present this question to you. Did you enroll in the college that got back to you first with the information you requested? Well, you know, 43%, and half of graduate students, in fact, said yes. So why don't you do some secret shopping on your own and with your own program and say, how long does it take to get information back? Because, by the way, you have a captured audience of 33%, and if you don't get back to them, they'll go to that second and third option. And, you know, the for-profits who have really done extremely well in prior years with the online education programs they run were very quick. I think they answer within 60 seconds. We're not saying to everybody on this attendance that you need to do that, but you certainly can't wait many hours or days. Because the communication they want is the detailed information about the program of interest. And moving on, I want to support this earlier point on time is a question that dealt with length of time before their search. Length of time before their search. Okay, hold on one second. Okay. Sorry. I'm looking for importance of first contact. And then we did that and that. Okay, here we are. Length of time from search to application. Do you see that? 4 weeks or less, 40%. These are, I wouldn't say they're impulsive, but they know what they want. And they want to make these decisions quickly. So go back, do some secret shopping on your own procedures and see what time means. The next one follows suit. Length of time from application to classes, 4 weeks or less. So these people are there within a month or two. This is not a long process. These are people who know what they want, and when they find the right program at the right cost, you've got them. Now moving on to Dave and the type of instruction they prefer.
I think this next slide is very interesting. We asked this 4 years ago and brought it back this year. We got the same results. If you look at the instructor-led category at the bottom, that's what most of us do. We offer a class that starts on Monday and has a set of activities. The instructor's there responding to forum questions and so forth. But look at the other choices. We gave them the choice of independent study, do it on your own, kind of self-paced, or another variation where you have all the class activities and materials, but you do it kind of one-on-one with the faculty member, not a structured class. And only a third picked the instructor-led class, which is what is far and away the most common that's offered. So opportunity here to think about offering your programs in a little bit different format. All the material is there, the content is there, the courses are built. So letting students go through that content in a different sequence could be very attractive to some students, it looks like. And this is a question that's important to me from my academic background. We asked them, how many hours did you spend studying for your class? The most common one there is in white, 6 to 10 hours a week. And I would just encourage all of you to check. And if you're offering the typical 6-week or 8-week program, which is pretty common, your students need to spend a traditional 3-credit course that's offered over 8 weeks. They should be spending about 20 hours a week to earn the credit based on the Department of Ed guidelines for credit, but it looks like many of these students are not spending that much time. So something to think about with the accreditation and the Department of Ed regulations, whether the courses are really credit worthy based on the amount of time that students are investing in the study process.
And Dave, I think we should emphasize again that this is by course. It's not for the program they're in, which could be 1 or 2 or 3 courses. It's for each course.
That's a very good point. If you're taking 2 classes, the amount of time goes up dramatically for that credit earned. We also kind of wanted to push on this notion of how do you improve the quality of the academic experience. So we said, what engagement tools do you think would be most effective? Of course, the message board comes out number 1 because that's what almost every online course has. I think it's very interesting, though, to look at number 2. 25% said group projects, 16% said a partner being assigned in your class. What this tells me is that there's room for experimentation, and these students would value a variety of instructional experiences and and the way materials are delivered and the way that their class is structured in the online environment. So again, an opportunity to kind of distinguish yourself from everybody else, because most of us are using a common kind of curriculum with similar LMSs, with similar features and similar format in the class, so it's hard to distinguish really one program from another. Asked a question about electronic course materials, and it splits evenly. Some of them want them, some of them want the paper materials, so obviously if you could do both, that would meet the needs of, or the interests of most of these students. That's a theme that we'll talk about in just a minute here too. Moving on to cost, we asked them how much did it cost you, and these are the responses we got. We think these are pretty accurate. When you look at the degree, $25,000 for an undergraduate degree, but when the average student's bringing in 40 to 50 transfer credits in programs, so it looks like these numbers are pretty realistic when you think about it. And again, the data that the number one piece of information they're looking for on your website is cost. How you present that cost is interesting because you want to factor in if the average student's bringing in 30 transfer credits, the price that they're actually paying is not the total price of the degree. So something to think about how you nuance that information, especially if you're not the low-cost provider within your region. We also followed up 2 years in a row now with this question, and you can see a little trend here maybe. Did you pick the cheapest? And 44% of the undergrads said yes, and 45% of the grad students. Looks like a pretty good increase from the year before. So something to think about again, going back to my comments previously about accreditation. If everybody's accredited and that's the mark of quality, why not look at expense? Or why not present other factors that are important for your institution, like the quality of your faculty, the outcomes like job placement, or factors like that that counteract this least expensive choice. This was amazing data for me because we hear a lot about the amount of debt that people are incurring and a student financial aid debt bubble and so forth. But a really good percentage of these students are incurring less than $5,000 in debt. Just about half of them have less than $5,000. I think that's tremendously good news. If you knew this data for your institution and you fit in that category, that would be great news to share with your students and help them understand, because cost is so important to this group. There are clearly some at the bottom that are incurring a lot of debt to get their degrees, but there's pretty good news here, I think, for many institutions that their student body is not incurring a lot of debt, and you can show that it is possible.
We have another quick question.
Sure,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. Mm-hmm.
We have someone who was curious that if we looked at the success and retention of those who applied within 4 to 8 weeks of initial contact versus those who spent more time in the decision-making process.
That's a good question. We don't track that data, so we couldn't tell you that it turns out one way or the other. In my experience.
And one thing we could do is look at those who completed their next year we could do this, Dave. We could go back now and do that depending on how important it is, because we could look at those who came into our survey when they were finished and then find out how long it took them. Or those who are currently enrolled over 50% of the time, completion of their program, and match it to this question about how long it took them.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Maybe we could fine-tune some questions around that for the survey next time around.
Yeah, because some people might think the quicker the decision, the less reliable the choice. I don't know.
Could be. Good point.
Okay.
Here's the last question about debt and finance. So we asked them, how long do you think it's going to take you to pay this off? And again, half the people, if you add up the top 3 choices there, it's between 3 and 4 years, they'll be debt-free from their college education. I like to throw out these numbers that the average college graduate over their lifetime will make about $900,000 more than a high school graduate. And if you kind of divide that by 45-year work career, the college education is worth about $20,000 a year for a person versus a high school education. So if you look at it, it takes you a couple years to pay off that debt. It's a good value proposition. Even though students are very concerned about taking on debt and the cost of higher education, there's still a tremendous message about it's worth it. It's worth the time and it's worth the investment because it pays off fairly quickly, and this data supports that. So we're going to give you a few kind of takeaways that Carol and I have picked up from this data, and again, we're open to your questions and comments. So these people are diverse. On a lot of these questions, you don't get a clear-cut answer like you do on the accreditation question. What's the most important topic or way to choose reputation is based on accreditation. That's overwhelming. But many of these things, they split out. For example, it's pretty common that students don't like to go to they're required to go to seminars at fixed times or be in class at a fixed time. And that's one of the top 10 responses in why do you pick an institution, for example. But there's a significant minority, maybe 20%, that say I'll be willing to go to 4 or 5 fixed time, scheduled activities for the whole class every year. We looked at the data on textbooks. About a third of them or half of them want electronic books, and half of them want paper materials. So it's really hard to get one size fits all for this audience, and makes it tougher for those of you that are planning and leading these programs, but you want to think about options and choices because there's always a fairly significant minority, it seems like, on just about every question that has a counterpoint. Affordability is critical. We've hit this pretty hard up till now, so I'm not going to kind of beat a dead horse, but it's an important topic for this group. And I find this fascinating that Carol emphasized earlier that about a quarter of these online students are traditional age, 18 to 24-year-old students, but they're never going to set foot on a college campus. So we've got to think about college differently than we have in the past. The idea of packing your clothes and going away and living in a dorm for 4 or 5 years is really, really the minority now, and online makes that even more prominent. So don't think about the average student as being one of these 30-year-olds that's going back for a career change. They're just a different group out there. I think blended programs hold a lot of promise. We haven't hit those questions very hard in this presentation, but there were a series of questions in the report where we said, would you be willing to go to campus for one class in your program? Or would you be willing to do an internship, that maybe a not required internship, where you had to show up at a certain place at a certain time, for example? Or would you attend activities if they were offered? And again, a significant minority said they would be willing to do that. They would want to do that. So I think there's great opportunity because it's clear that this is a regional audience. They're typically within 100 miles of the campus. You can do some face-to-face activities in the classroom as well as support services. So it's something to consider as a way to improve service and engage these students. Carol, I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Okay. Online study leads to online study. We found in this analysis that many of the people who have engaged in in our current survey had taken online in the past, and they rate it as well, if not better, than classroom-based. So we think of all these high school students that are required in some states, maybe some of your states, to take at least one online high school course, and think of all your colleges right now who are allowing the traditional day students to take at least, if they can take online courses if they choose, or in the summer so that they can go home and study. I think we're breeding a new population of enhanced online students. And that's why that earlier chart that Dave pointed to shows that we expect 25% of the higher education market to be online by 2025, something like that. And I think that's a good prediction. The program or major drives the selection process. We said enough about this, I think, but it does give you a good recommendation in terms of what should be prominent in your marketing messages. I see a lot of ads locally in the New York area about study online here, study online there, so on and so forth. But if you list those major program areas that we cited earlier, that would enhance your appeal because they know they can get information technology, or they can get nursing, or the things they wonder about. And some of those examples on your marketing materials would help, since it does make a difference whether they'll even approach your institution. They pre-select that, remember that high percentage that know what they want, and they're ready for you to court them. So don't turn them off. Don't wait to get back to them. Don't send them the standard emails that are automatic, and don't wait to do it by mail. You've got to be on the phone, and I think the phone is still the key ingredient. The phone is very important, followed up with emails and direct information about number 1, program, number 2, cost. The website, I think this is the next one. Oh, well, sorry, no, I missed my favorite here, back here. 1 second. In online education, everything is local. How promising to so many of the institutions here with us today: Riviera, Carlo, Monroe College, St. John's, College of Charleston, because within 100 miles you have a huge population. And as Dave said, blended too will work, because if they are rather local, then they can come in periodically for a class-based session. So you could do both and give them a little touch and feel, but those who want to do completely online, you can have it that way as well. But I would spend my marketing dollars, unless you're in a niche area and you want to promote something that you need to reach farther for, the marketing dollars should be spent on your region. And of course, the website, cannot say enough about that. I think every one of you should go back and re-examine it as and I know what you're going to say. The IT people won't let me do this. The professors won't let me do that. But, you know, we all need revenue these days, and you can make an arrangement where they allow you to do what you have to do and you bring them the students. And finally, my favorite slide, and that is, age no longer predicts the way we live. You can be 19 and want an fully online course at Biola, and you can be 42 and may want a classroom-based course because you just lost your job, whatever. But online learning has no age limitations, and I doubt if many of you in the audience today have a minimum age for entering online programs. If you do, it's a big mistake, I think. So that's it. We're almost up, David, for our hour, but do we have any more questions?
Yeah, here's the contact info for Carol and myself. And again, you can visit the website that's listed here if you want to download a full copy of the report itself, and you'll all get a copy of this presentation. So Carol and I are going to stick around for another half hour. If you want to ask us some questions, we'll do that. And we'll open up the audio line so you can ask a question verbally and we can talk about it. So thank you very much for your time and attention. We appreciate your interest in this information. And we're going to move now and open up the phone line if anybody wants to talk. We have somebody that you're going to give them to ask a question?
Yep, we're putting in the Q&A how they can go ahead and ask questions, and then we're working on unmuting people so they can just ask them directly through the phone line.
Okay.
Dave, I have a question.
Fine. Can you tell us who you are or what institution you work at?
My name is Dr. Kit Carson. I'm with South Georgia State College in a small town in Douglas, Georgia, southern Georgia.
Sure thing. What's your question?
My question is, I'm more interested in the high school as far as a basis of, I guess, as far as a turning point maybe for online education. I know currently our high school does not offer any online learning whatsoever, and I wanted to know your thoughts concerning that. I mean, I did ask a question trying to find out how many high schools do have online courses or programs, but I don't think your study actually addressed that. But maybe you perhaps know a little bit more about that particular situation.
I just have a little bit of general knowledge about it. I think there's, on the one end, there's 3 or 4 states that require every student to have at least one online class before they graduate. So that's the one extreme. And then the other may be where it's totally optional and schools don't have it available. I do know that most states have some form of a virtual high school or an online high school where students can go and get credits, but it may not be in your particular school district. It may be a statewide organization that offers online high school classes. So that's about the extent of my knowledge on the K-12 side.
Okay. Well, in your experience, do you think that's going to be the wave of the future, or is that the direction that we're heading, more and more offerings at the high school environment?
Certainly been a surge, just like there was at the college level in the last 10 years, for high school students to have the option. Like I said, almost every state now has at least one virtual high school where students can go to class either for 1 or 2 classes or for their full program. So I think it's starting to taper off, just like it is at the
last
college.
Week, and I'm making my rounds to everyone at this point. And I really just wanted to give us an opportunity to chat, get to know each other a little bit better. I don't have an agenda or anything like that. Just really, more,
somebody on the line
just to really talk through kind of your background, your experience, and kind of, talk me through what good things are happening at your centers, what challenges are you having, and what I can help you with. And then, of course, I will give you, a little bit of insight to what I have kind of in my brain right now that I'm marinating on in terms of
maybe you should mute everybody at this point again.
So, with that being said, I'm going to let you all talk, and I'm going to stop talking. And whoever would like to go first, first kind of give me, a brief background about yourself, how you, came to be at Union, and we'll go from there.
You should mute everybody, Erin.
Yep, we are working on it.
October, I think it's 4 years, so it's coming up to 4 years.
Okay, Dave. Now, who were you just speaking to so we can specifically unmute them?
Don't recall the name, gentleman from Georgia. I think we.
Okay, I think it was Dr. Kit. I know who it is. Okay, we'll get them unmuted.
Yeah, that was right. So just unmute one at a time.
Dr. Carson, are you able to talk through the line now? All right, David, actually it looks like Dr. Carson has disconnected from the webinar.
Okay. We have somebody else that would like to raise an audio question that you could unmute one at a time?
Yep, if anybody has a question, just go ahead and put it, let us know in the QA pane that you'd like to ask a question, and we'll go ahead and unmute you.
Everybody's probably afraid to ask a question, think that the whole world will hear them.
Okay, well, we can give it another minute and see if anybody has any questions, either in text or verbally.
We still have quite a few people that are at least they're logged in. I would make a comment in response to Larry's question here that's near the end of the QA session about he's in an institution that has fairly high tuition. He can't change the tuition, so how do you respond to that? And Andrew had one response there, but there are some strategies to think about. Overall, you want to emphasize why it's a good value. You know, if you have low student-faculty ratios, or if you have very high placement rates, or if you have very high, satisfaction ratings from employers, or maybe your institution is such that students can get through and finish in a rapid time. So there's other factors besides cost that are important to students, like those things that you could emphasize and say, hey, it's worth it to pay the price because you get, high placement rates, great faculty, short time degree, we accept a lot of transfer students. So there's things that you can definitely do that you do have control over. Something else I would encourage is to try some scholarships, try some ways like free textbooks for first class or things like that may be a way to attract students to get them past that barrier of the price tag up front. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but I think data about the value of the degree. Okay, you're going to spend $25,000 or $30,000 to get this degree, but our average graduate gets a raise within a year, and it'll take them X number of years to pay for that degree. So there's good things that I think that any institution can do to set a different set of criteria and to change the conversation with that student. Well, it looks like we've responded to all the questions, even though there's a lot of folks still on in attendance or listening in. So again, let's thank everybody for participating and encourage you to download the report, use it any way that's helpful, and we'll sign off for now.
Yes, thank you for joining us today.
We actually do have one more question if you guys would like to touch on it. It was asked in text.
Okay.
They have no increase in the advertising budget for 5 years, attempting to best allocate funds. Any recommendations for a mix to reach the online student?
What?
Carol, that's yours.
Their marketing budget has not changed in 5 years.
It looks like it, yes.
And so what's the end of the question?
Do you have any recommendations for what mix to use to reach the online student in marketing?
Yeah, well, my first response is, in the online marketplace, if your budget hasn't changed in 5 years, you're starting in a very problematic situation. Someone has to take to the leadership of the institution and tell them what this market is like. And if you're like many of the institutions I deal with, revenue is very, very important to this institution. And you've got to almost prepare so I'm arguing for a greater marketing budget. I'll get to the point of how to use it more wisely. But you've got to get to the institution and say, you know, this is the deal we're going to make. We'll bring you these many students, but we need this much resources. And say to them, for example, if you're a private institution and you have a graduate online program, let's say the tuition you bring in per year for a graduate student is maybe $15,000 or $20,000 a year, and let's multiply that times 2 years. That's $40,000 from a graduate student, which will not take institutional dollars, so it's a great revenue stream. And you'd say to the administrators and the decision makers of your institution, what can I spend to bring in someone who will pay $40,000 and not require any resources from us? And if the answer is under $1,000, you can say, it's impossible to do that. How about $1,500? How about $2,000? And I'm afraid that you've answered this question, because I would guess that your budget is under 100. Probably to bring in 200 new students a year, you probably have a budget of less than $1,000 or $500. And in this highly, as Dave said earlier, competitive marketplace, unless you have a brand that stands out and the words of that brand can just tingle every soul, you're not going to make it. You have to give to get. Now, the best techniques, I think, because you are regional, is I'd go back to the optimization guideline we gave you, but also those direct mail pieces, because I don't know the institution, but if you're, remember the regional emphases here. So I would pound that direct mail to individuals who are likely to be in the market, and you can do that by census tract analysis, and be responsive and have a team of people at the institution who can respond quickly to these people, these inquirers. Dave, did I miss, is there something you can add?
No, it's a tough one, because I know that you don't start from zero. They start with a certain budget, and administrators are expecting certain revenue from that program. So it's hard for them, especially if you're in a state of kind of declining enrollment or flat enrollments, to say, you know, if I had $50,000, I could, you know, add 20 students, and that would generate an extra $50,000. It's tough to break through that mindset, and but I would also try to use the argument that, let me do a test case, test, you know, a certain degree or a certain program with a certain marketing scheme, like a direct mail campaign, and very carefully track your results so that you can show, well, we invested X and we generated so many students, so the overall value was Y. But it's
right.
it's a spot. Mm-hmm.
But this is, as Dave said earlier, this is a field which is going to get more and more competitive. And if you're an institution that spends most of its resources on attracting 18-year-olds, then that's not a wise decision, and you've got to show them what it is you can bring to the institution with some additional resources.
Great. Okay. Well, I don't see any additional questions at this time. So I just want to thank everyone that attended the webinar today, and a special thank you to both Dave and Carol for sharing this report with us. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to go download the report at learninghouse.com/OCS2015.